Welcome to episode 3 of the Kings of Khaos podcast. Al,
Adam, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Busy
Yeah.
week?
Very busy week. What about you?
Very busy week. We're going to have a very busy topic today, too, I see.
Yeah, I think it's a loaded topic to be quite honest.
Why load it?
Loaded in the sense where I think we might ruffle some feathers today.
Really?
Yeah,
I like to ruffle some feathers.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. What is our topic today?
Um, I like to call it the Neanderthal's Guide to Dating.
I like that.
You
The
like that?
Neanderthals Guide to Dating.
Yeah.
Who are the Neanderthals?
Men,
Okay.
men. Not all men, not all men
Not us
before.
specifically?
Not us specifically,
Okay.
but okay, so let me give some context.
Okay.
As you know, we've been out talking to women and everything else in terms of date fails, first date fails specifically, along with just conversations we've had with guys and everything else as well. And there's a lot of guys who don't know what the hell they're doing in terms of a first date. And it ends up being a disaster. It's almost as if they have this playbook or this guidebook they follow that's from like the 1800s.
So we're not supposed to have a playbook?
Yeah, no, it's a weird concept, I know, but get this, dating
Mhm.
should be organic.
So are we saying it's changed a lot over the years? It's not the same as it was in, let's say, 1950, 1960, leading up to the 1990s. It's greatly changed since then, which is my belief.
Yeah, I would think so. I would hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, so our subject is dating.
Yep.
I'm going to make fun of you a little bit for how you wrote this out, but it's very. So our topic says how to be a gentleman on the first date or at least a decent human. And then it says overview. Not all first dates lead to a second. Regardless, guys should make an effort and present themselves well leading up to, while on, and after the date.
Yeah.
It's very kind of nerdy.
I'm not suggesting guys should be themselves.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not suggesting you should put on a show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not suggesting it's like you play a certain role, you come off nerdy, like be yourself. But okay, so let me give some background context.
Okay.
Okay, so even in talking to people leading up to the first date, I want to start. Let's forget the date itself, but leading up to that first date. Okay, spoken to guys, right? And I hear things like, "Oh, the first date's not a date." Okay, what is
Why
it?
is the first date not a date?
Oh, because it's a vetting process.
What's involved in that vetting process?
Asking questions to see if you want to go out on a date.
So this is the pre-dating ritual.
Yeah, I guess it'd be like when I go for an interview. It's not an interview.
Yeah.
It's a vetting process to see if I'm going to get an interview.
Dating can feel like an interview sometimes, though.
And that's part of the problem. That to me is an epic date fail
Okay.
when it feels like an interview. So I guess for me, the first thing is, I don't know about you and your take, I'd love to hear it, but for me, the vetting process starts before the date.
Okay.
It's through that connection, whether it's through text, to me, it shouldn't be just through text. I think most women still like to have a conversation.
Well, but let's go backwards for a second.
Okay.
In this day and age, the vetting process starts before that. So now
Okay,
we're
okay.
beyond the old version. Now we're at the apps. What's the first
Okay,
part of the
so
vetting process?
I see. I'm talking about if it happens to be a setup where you meet someone organically. But if you want to go all the way to the apps, take it from the apps. Let's start from there then.
I mean, set up organically, it's a different
Okay,
process.
okay,
But let's take the apps because I think
okay.
more people have gone that route recently. So you're on an app, and obviously we know the first thing you're looking at is appearance,
Yep,
which is unfortunate because
yep,
that shouldn't be the way that should be, but it's the way the world is now.
yep.
Okay. But let's, as an example, let's say before you do anything else, when you're on the dating app and you click on something because you like someone, do you click on a picture and say, I really like this picture of you, or do you comment on something that the person said that really, resonates with you and use that? Because I see a difference when people do one way or the other.
Absolutely. I think first of all, lines like "Hey, hi,
Not gonna work.
what's that?" or "What's up, beautiful? What's up, sexy?"
Yeah, my grandfather, hey, is what horses eat. Yeah.
Right? So no, if you're on an app, look for something that you find interesting. Look for something that you
Mhm.
can comment on. Ask an interesting question. Inquire. right? To me, that's a starting point. If we're looking at the apps, definitely.
Do you use the same line over and over again?
No,
No.
no,
Something unique for each person.
that's what it's about. If you're okay, let me reframe.
Okay.
Depends on the purpose of why you're trying to connect with someone. If someone's just trying to hook up, they may be using that line over and over. But I'm talking about dating for the purpose of an authentic connection here.
Okay.
And so if you're looking for an authentic connection,
You have to find something to authentically connect on.
absolutely,
Yes.
that is specific to that person, that is genuine.
Okay.
That for me is key.
Okay.
That for me is key.
So that's step one.
Yeah.
So now you've made that step. You're not using it like a resume that you use and hand it to everyone the same
No,
way. You're,
no.
you're doing it differently for the job process,
Yep.
for each person. And so you have, I don't want to say a good experience. You have a good, you're getting more dates than most people probably using your process, let's just say, right? Because you're interested in them. What you're saying is interesting. So after that happens, what's your next step there? Or what's their next step towards you? You notice I'm leaving myself out of this. I'm
I
just
know, I
going,
know, I know. And I'm just going by past experience as well and things I've learned. Although, I definitely want to hear your input as well. But in terms of this, I think you have to see how the conversation's going. If there's no conversation, that might be a sign that it's not a good fit. Okay. But again, we're not trying to write a playbook here for guys for how to get dates.
Definitely
So I
not.
want to clarify that right away.
I
Okay.
agree with that. Yes.
So all of you out there, again, this is not a playbook how to get dates. It's if you're genuinely interested. My whole thing for me is how to go about it in a proper manner because women take a lot of issue with the way you guys approach things. So assuming it's going well, don't be a pen pal.
Okay.
Okay. Like at that point, you know,
When you say
is
pen pal, like 15 paragraphs to their
15
one,
paragraphs, you're writing for 3 weeks. Like, people want to meet.
how
There's no,
long after the first contact in this sense where you're writing them do you think it should be before you set up the date?
I think it varies.
Okay.
I think it really varies. I think it depends on the conversation. It's how it's going. I think you have to judge that.
Mhm.
I think it's also about putting it out there. You ask and then you base it on how comfortable someone feels.
Okay.
But I know, and a lot of women, like that's how they feel is like guys are on there playing pen pals. Guys are on there trying to, 20, 30, 40 women. They're trying to, it's a numbers
I'm
game.
gonna I'm gonna look at it from a different angle
Okay.
because you and I are in different situations. Okay, so you're a single guy, no kids.
Yeah.
It's a little different than my situation. So I'm separated, divorced guy, two kids. I have my kids half the time.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different for me because now I have hurdles that you may not have. So in my case, the hurdles are, does my schedule match up with this person? So it takes me a little while to figure that out through
Absolutely.
conversation. Um, are they ready to date? Those kind of things, especially if they have kids, right? Or they're going to ask me questions about me having kids and they not be comfortable with it. So it might take me a little bit longer to either, the vetting process or even to set up a date to figure out when the two of us, it might be 2 weeks before I can go on a date. So what am I supposed to do in the meantime when I want to go on a date with someone? I can ask them on a date, but should I contact them every couple of days to keep them interested? Those kind of things.
I think so.
Okay.
Right. Again, if the communication's going well, we're talking from the point of view of guys, right? And things, mistakes people make.
Mhm.
It works both ways. I'm not suggesting otherwise. But if someone's interested, they want to know the guy is interested. And, kind of jumping in and jumping out of the conversation where, okay, the date, we set up a date for next week. So I'll talk to you in 3 days. What message are you sending at that point?
You're sending a message that you're probably not interested.
Or you got like 22 dates lined up at the same time.
I mean, that's possible too, but I find that just people in general now drop conversations on a regular basis and they
Absolutely.
think that's normal communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And so again, I'm not suggesting that you're trying to set up a date within 10 minutes of meeting someone,
Mhm.
but it is a matter of once you're at that point where you're having good conversation, if you're on the app, move off the app, right? Get a number, have a phone conversation. To me, phone conversations are huge for a whole host of reasons. It allows to get a sense of who that person really is organically, because again, if you're texting back and forth,
Mhm.
you don't have to respond right away. You can think about what you want to say. It's a whole different process when you're talking to someone live.
Okay. What do you think are the things that are putting women off? We can talk about men as different part,
Yeah.
but what do you think is like what are people playing games they find?
I think it's a combination. I think in some cases, some guys right away, it's all about sex,
Okay, the
right?
quote unquote dick pic being sent. Yeah.
That, or just, you know, all kinds of questions about that nature. And again,
Or send me pictures.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So
Which
there's a,
I've never done. Okay. So we'll move on from that. Al's not answering that question.
I'm not saying either
Okay.
way.
Yeah.
No, I mean, but what I'm saying is that
Well, no, my theory is, you're doing it right by the second date, possibly you're going to see it anyway. So why do you have to ask for pictures? So,
no, I think it comes down to I think it comes down to being authentic with your intentions. And what I
okay.
mean by that is if all you're doing is looking for a hookup,
Mm,
be upfront with that.
okay.
Because there are women out there looking for the same thing.
Okay.
Okay. If you're not sure and you're just looking to see where things go, be genuine with that. If you're looking for a relationship, be genuine with that.
Hmm.
Make your intentions upfront, but don't play games. Don't string someone along.
Do you think there's a lot of people who are, let's say, shut-ins or really introverted who never actually intend to meet people and they waste their time? Or also, we have on these dating sites a lot of men who are married who are now looking for women and wasting their time.
There, I think it's a combination.
Okay.
I think there's also a third factor. I think when we take a look at people and you look at social media, right, and you look at society and everyone wants to feel important and valued.
Hmm.
So what happens with that? It's, hey, you know, I get all these messages or I get all these likes. It's almost like, right, on social media, I've got all these follows, I've
Yeah.
got all these
It's
comments.
like you hit the jackpot in Vegas. Yeah.
Exactly, right? So in some ways, I think in some cases that's all people are looking for as well. Not everyone,
It's just validation that
absolutely.
someone's interested in them. They heard the ding and like, oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly, right?
Yeah.
As I saw it referred to in, oh my gosh, Atomic, I think it's Atomic Habits I saw it in, by James Clear. It's like the slot machine in your pocket,
Yeah.
right? It's that instant gratification, that instant
Which is
satisfaction.
all social media, not just dating apps, but
Absolutely.
and that's kind of what we've become in our society, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are some of the pre-dating issues, and you never even got into people asking for whether they want a long-term relationship or friends with benefits or
Yeah.
that's a whole other story. And
Yeah. And going back to
yeah.
the vetting process, that's what the phone conversation's for.
Mhm.
If you're sitting and talking to someone and the two of you aren't jiving, maybe it's not the best match. Or
You can weed people out that way for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if you have very differing viewpoints on things,
Hmm. Very,
right?
very, very,
Very,
very,
very
yeah.
different. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean
I'm just gonna,
that's a non-starter right there.
exactly. And I'll leave it at that. But
He's
uh,
talking about politics, religion, those kind of things.
exactly. That's where that can be a no starter as well. But
Yeah.
for me, by the time you're making plans to go out on a date with someone, it's not a vetting process. It's not a transactional process. It's you're going out with the intent to see now, things have been great so far. Do you connect in person?
I mean, personally, I think the way you should be going into it is I want to meet new people.
Yeah.
This may go nowhere.
Yeah.
This could be a very nice person that, I might just meet once, or we might become friends, we might date. Obviously, you're on a dating site because you want to date. But if you're open to different possibilities, you never know. You may never go out with this person more than once, but they might suggest you years later a friend of theirs because they had a good experience with you. So, you're playing the odds long term, but also just being a good person and saying, I'm 80%, positive that this was a good person. I'd like to go out with them just to see where it goes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, I can speak from my own experience in the past, where I've gone out with people, maybe we didn't click, I recommended them to a friend or vice versa, or
Mhm.
we've stayed friends and just great in terms of friends, just not the chemistry in
You were
terms of
talking to
relationship.
someone the other day, and I'm just waiting for it not to work out with you. So, you're going to introduce me.
Did there? Thanks. Um,
That's the kind of friend I am.
there you go. But it's those type of things, right? But it's all about how you represent yourself,
Yeah.
right? And again, the authenticity in there as well. So that's kind of to me the whole lead up.
I think the whole lead, and I think that's great. It's the best way of looking at it when you're going in to, want to be authentic, be yourself, try to learn as much as you can about the other person. It's not a vetting process and like you have a criterion that you need to go through.
No,
Um, you just want to have a natural conversation with someone and you'll feel it one way or the
exactly,
other.
exactly.
So now you've gotten through that process. What do you think the reasons are why people would want to not have a lot of conversation, but then immediately go out on a date. I have my version of it, but what do you think other people's reasons might be for that? To just skip over that
Yeah.
whole process, have a 2 minute conversation, have a date, and go meet in person, especially women. Because then actually women want to have a phone conversation with someone at least before they meet them in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that too, as
Yeah.
well, for a sense of comfort and security.
They don't
I
want to
think
just meet you in some seedy bar
CD place,
somewhere.
no,
Yeah. They want
no,
to actually hear your voice. Yeah.
absolutely. As they should,
Yeah.
as they should. Again, why in terms of with a guy, I look at it, is this more a numbers game for them? So, okay, let's just get it done. And, they've got 5 or 6 potential dates lined up. So let's just move quickly.
Yeah. But are guys the only people who have 5 or 6 dates potentially lined up in this day and age?
No, not at all. No. But I'm just talking about, it's things guys can do differently right now,
Okay.
right? That's the whole thing.
I'm trying to defend the other
I
side.
know, I know. And I'm not here to trash. It's not all guys, but it's things, right? We spoke of things that guys do that really are turnoffs for women.
Yeah.
And then what ends up happening is there ends up becoming stereotypes and generalizations, right? Where it's all guys view women a certain way on the apps or in dating, women start to view all guys a certain way, and the cycle continues. And then everyone's already has these walls up before even going out because of past experiences.
Yeah.
And then neither one's giving each other a fair chance if that's the case.
And this is why you work on yourself before you start dating.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I have a specific reason why I want to meet someone in person and why I understand why a lot of women would want to meet someone in
Okay.
person too. I gotta stop tapping the table. My personal version of that isn't, to meet them, to see what they look like. It's actually chemical.
Oh,
I believe in pheromones, and I believe that will tell you a lot just sitting across the table from somebody, right? And you're not going to get that feeling looking at someone's picture or texting with them or even talking to them on the phone.
there's that. The other thing is, I've had great conversations with people over the phone,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet them. And it's not even necessarily the pheromones. They're comfortable in a certain setting.
Yeah, I've
And
fallen in
right,
love with people in text or things like that, and then met them in person. Like, oh, this isn't going to work out.
and they can be phenomenal. Sometimes it's just once in person, they're very shy, they're very quiet, they can't even communicate.
Mhm.
They're just a very, very
They're good
different
on
person.
paper. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's or
Hmm.
or in all fairness, maybe it's just the combination is not a good combination in person, but
Mm.
regardless, there's that element as well.
Okay.
Right? So what's the point in, it's almost like having that a long distance relationship in your own city,
Yeah.
right? Texting, talking on the phone, 3 months have passed. It's like I don't get that mentality.
Yeah. I can understand that. I
Right.
mean, we're now talking kind of about the mistakes that guys will make on
Yeah.
dates. We have a long list here.
We do as I'm kind of
Yeah, we
scrolling
should
through.
start reading some of these out. First one: drinking a lot, getting drunk, underdressed, poor hygiene, being late, bad date ideas of choosing the wrong place, like going to a movie for your first date and not talking during the whole date, and then actually having connection with them, but have learned nothing about them.
Yeah.
I've done that once before. It's actually a long relationship, but didn't turn out well. Being lavish, trying to overly impress with money, which is always a bad idea because you're not being authentic.
Yeah.
We'll go into these a little bit more. Being rude to staff, that's a big one,
It's huge.
right? You
Really
walk in, you don't get the
huge.
table you want, and you kind of lose your mind on the staff, and then you get kicked out, and you're both banned from that restaurant, and that kind of sets a bad precedent for your first date.
There's no coming back from that.
No,
No.
but I have a lot of female friends that have told me that story, and then they asked me, "Well, should I keep going out with them?" And the answers were resounding,
No.
"No."
No. Because the way someone treats the staff is going to represent the way they're going to treat you.
Yeah.
That
Not in the first 3 months, but give it some
But give
time.
it some time, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like a flashing red flag if
Yeah.
I've ever seen one,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh
Absolutely.
no, that's a it should say run on their forehead.
Well, if you want to keep, are there more? Because I
There
want to
are
pull
a
up some
few
stats,
more,
actually.
right? Being rude to staff,
Yeah.
talking too much about yourself, and not asking questions about them. I'm going to stop on that one for a second.
Okay.
Just as someone who's taught communications in the past.
Yeah.
And one of the things I actually teach my students, if you ever want someone to like you, what do you think is the smart play there? Talk more about yourself or let them talk?
Let them to ask questions.
Yeah.
It
But
shows a
why?
genuine interest.
Psychologically, why? And this
psychologically,
isn't a trick. It's just it's
yeah,
how the world works.
no, because if you're asking questions, it shows interest,
Hmm.
first of all. It allows, it allows them to talk about something they're comfortable with, something they're very familiar with as
Hmm.
well. And that ideally allows people to build connection. The flip side is if all you're doing is talking about yourself, what does that say? Arrogance, cocky, look at
Well, all
me.
they're gonna
I need all the attention.
if all you're doing is talking, you're not allowing them to talk. They're probably going to start thinking things like you're arrogant. This guy never stops talking.
Yeah,
But psychologically speaking, if you let the other person talk and you just keep asking them questions like you're interested in them and they keep talking, they start having a good time. So when they leave that date, what's their feeling about you? It's fully positive
absolutely.
because, but the positivity came from inside of them, not from you. You were
Yeah.
just asking questions. So a lot of men I find make that mistake because a lot of men, as you said, like on this list is boasting. You know, I have this, I do
Yeah.
this. It's like never she never gets to talk, and that does not go well.
So here's some interesting stats, which I just want to pull up for a second, okay?
Oh yeah, and then I'm finishing this long
Yeah,
list.
absolutely. So physical appearance,
Yeah.
okay, it's important, and these are polls done.
Okay.
Um,
By what was
for
the percentage?
44%.
That's it
Yeah,
in this day and age.
shocking, right?
Most people are picking people by physical appearance, and
But
not even in a picture that's shaded and you can't see all of it.
exactly,
Yeah,
and sometimes 10 years old.
sometimes.
Oh, and talking about mistakes,
Yeah, we're not
don't,
talking about people putting the wrong
yeah,
age. Yeah,
don't be, yeah, wrong age, old pictures. Don't be pulling that
yeah.
shit. Okay. Greater values placed on manners, which was, are you ready for this? 51%.
Okay.
Personality,
Mm-hmm.
48%, and conversational skills, 47%.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes from a May 2023 New York Post article.
They didn't even put in sense of humor.
Okay. Not everyone has.
No, not everyone has a sense of humor. It's true.
Okay. Here's the other thing. Stats show that people tend to make a decision quite often within the first 5 to 15 minutes. Obviously, that can change, but if you start off with a really bad impression, you're done right away,
No, first impressions are
right?
really important. Some people can overcome them, but if you come in like, look, everyone's different too. Like some people will judge you based on appearance, and let's forget how you look, just what you're wearing. They don't like your shoes. That's a personal preference for
It,
certain people. You can't get around it.
it is, but there's certain things you can do when they talk about appearance. Things like, hey, brush your hair.
Yeah.
Now, I'm one to talk, but
I had to cut my hair for this. You don't want to see what it used to look
right?
like.
I'm one to talk, but this is kind of the look I always do.
Yeah.
But it's little
But that's
things like
authentic and that's you.
that's me.
And
Exactly.
that's how you should present yourself. And if they
Exactly.
don't like it, they're not going to change you anyways.
But don't show up with stains on a shirt. Or if you're going out to, depending on where you're going, don't show up wearing like ripped jean shorts and a t-shirt.
Don't wear that t-shirt where your belly's hanging out. And
Exactly, exactly. So, it's the way they talk about dress for success.
Mhm.
Think about, for example, where you're going. And here's an interesting thing. Okay. And last week, funny story, but yeah, I know. Last week, having a conversation about first dates, and this other guy joined us, and total different opposites.
On your date?
No, not on a
Okay.
date, not on a date. No,
For the conversation.
exactly.
Okay. Yes.
I've had some weird dates where other people have joined, but no.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on coffee dates? And I'm talking about, I'm not going to name plate, but typical franchises where you go there for a coffee date. What are your thoughts for a first
Okay.
date?
So I can take this conversation from either side of the argument.
Okay.
I can tell you what my views are, but I've actually spoken to enough women too and gotten different preferences from different ages too.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like younger women versus some older women and some women that don't even want to date because they're just
Okay.
so my personal preference on the coffee date, I don't think it should make a difference.
Okay.
I will start by saying this. I do understand from a woman's perspective, even still in this day and age, even though I think society's changed a lot, especially in the last 10, 20 years, that it's not a 1950s, thinking process. But there's still women forget about what the men are doing. They want to get dressed up to go out on a date. It's
Yep.
like they want to get dressed up, they want to have fun, they want to get to know you as well. But that's what they're used to on dates, especially here. I was talking to a woman who was married for 20 years.
Okay.
Okay. She's just in the new dating pool. She was married young, so she's coming out. So she's still thinking what it was like to date before she got married. She hasn't even spent that much time like on the apps or anything like that. So in her mind, that's her preference because that's what she knows.
There's a big reason I think why women want to get dressed up as well on that
Okay.
first date. Any thoughts on that before I go into it? And I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, I went on a date once where it was in the middle of the afternoon. She wanted me to go in her area and she wanted to wear, yoga pants and a t-shirt. And, I thought about that when she told me what area we were going to in the middle of the day. It was 3 o'clock. And, I set up a date for soup. Right? That's like she was basically telling me I don't care about the date.
Uh,
And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's what you're telling me about the date. I'm telling you we're going for soup in
Soup.
the middle of the day.
I hope it was at least a good bowl of soup.
It's a good bowl of soup.
Okay, okay.
But
Nothing
that's what
beats
I'm
a good bowl
saying.
of
It's
soup.
like you can send messages that way as well, like time of day even for the date, or just picking a weird venue.
Absolutely. I think part of it though too is, and this is a whole other conversation piece. But when you talk about masculine and feminine polarity,
Mhm.
I think women want to be in their feminine when they're going out on these dates, and I think that's part of where the dressing up. Like, I look at this time of the year, right? And it's like they want to, they want to put on their summer dresses, these skirts and things, and come off and appear, feel in their feminine, feel sexy as well, and
No,
everything, and
women
feel
really do
beautiful.
not appreciate a man that can't make a decision.
Yeah,
Is going to have to make them choose which restaurant they're going to, or the guy gives her like six different options. Just pick an option and say, this is where we're going.
yeah,
From my point of view, when I try to make a date, I try to make it closer to her house just to make it more convenient for her, to give her more time too, because it takes a man no time to get dressed. It takes women a little bit longer,
yeah.
especially if they want to get dressed up.
Absolutely.
Um, I mean, that's all part of it. But not all women are like that. A lot of women do want to get dressed up
Yeah,
because historically that's how they started dating when they were younger. And that's how they see it. Now we are in a different era. So if women are dating seven guys at once, and you assume a man's dating seven people at once, and you're going to meet a lot of different people. I'm not saying we are, but I'm just saying, and you're going to meet a lot of different people.
yeah.
Um, you know, you have to understand that that whole old dating process of someone devoting their like 3 weeks while they're getting to know you, right? Just to you and vice versa. I don't think that exists anymore.
No.
So to have that assumption that, that's what he should still do for you, I don't think it works. But I understand why they still think that way.
See, it's interesting because I don't think it's necessary to go on a dinner
And
date the
that's not
first
every
time.
woman. Yeah.
No, right. And
Yeah.
again, we're talking theoreticals, we're talking
Hmm.
commonalities we're seeing, but it doesn't apply to every single
Of course
person,
not.
right? Um, Look,
We don't play in absolutes.
no, I personally am not necessarily a big fan of the traditional coffee date where you're just going in, you're sitting in a franchise place and having a coffee.
Hmm.
To me, it says you haven't put a lot of thought into it. That's just me. And
You want a coffee with like 17 words in it when you're ordering it?
yeah, exactly. Now, I'm not saying no to coffee. Do something different. Make it a bit more interesting. Grab a coffee and go for a hike, right? Or, go to a nice little place, a dessert place, and grab a coffee, like a dessert lounge. Grab a coffee and have some
Some of
dessert.
these dessert places are really nice. And
Absolutely.
it's the same it would cost you to go to a restaurant to eat. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm not saying no to coffee. It's the principle behind what the message you're sending.
Hmm.
Where again, it's okay. It almost gives the impression, we're going to do this again, a transactional feel
Yeah.
where we're going to go do this. 20 minutes, 30 minutes, in out, so on and so forth.
But that's the assumption.
It is the assumption, and I'm not saying that's always the case. Look, you can start off on a coffee day. I've done this before too. You
That's what
start
I'm
off,
saying. Me too.
right? You go, okay, right? So it's 11 in the morning. You go, you grab a coffee, you're having a great conversation.
You're on a date at 11 in the morning. I've done the breakfast date
There you
before.
go,
Who am I
right?
kidding?
It's
Yeah.
it's a nice change of pace, but you go, you grab a coffee, that turns into doing something else. It becomes lunch. It just carries on. The momentum's
I'll,
great.
I'll give you different scenarios here for what we're talking about. So
Okay.
this has worked for me differently. So we just mentioned I'll go with the breakfast date
Yeah.
first. Okay. So this is when I was younger. I set up a breakfast date. Breakfast turned out to a walk in the park. That walk in the park turned out to, hanging out in the park for 2 hours. I'm not going to say what I was doing in the park, but we were there for 2 hours.
I'm sure you're playing on the swings and the teeter
We
totter.
were.
Right, exactly.
I was pushing her, then she was pushing me. And then, that turned into, I think we went to see a movie in the afternoon, and then we hung out again that night. It turned into a full day date, but it was just breakfast. And, right, so that's one
Was
version of
that
that.
one breakfast or two breakfasts?
I'm not saying I will later. Uh, but there's other times where I've been on a coffee date
Yeah.
too. And right afterwards, and sometimes that part will be initiated by the woman. She'll let you know that she likes you by saying, "Where do you want to go next?"
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like, "Well, where do you want to go next?" She doesn't want the date to end.
Exactly.
So sometimes that's great because you know that she wants the date to continue, which is great. So I've had that happen multiple times, or I have gone to see a movie with someone and afterwards. Well, what do you want to do? And then I
Yeah.
went for crepes with them, and then after we went to a bar. So one little thing that you do, even though it might seem weird at first. I remember when I wanted to go see the movie, my kids were out of town. I just wanted to see a movie, and I convinced someone to go see a movie with
Yeah.
me. But it can turn into other things. So I find it interesting when people just have in their mind, it's like, oh, the person doesn't want to get to know me. They want to take me out for coffee. Well, yeah, initially I want to take you out for coffee because I don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste mine. It's a quick way of having a nice interaction with the person, but it doesn't have to stop at coffee. You could end up at dinner.
Absolutely. I think it's just the whole idea of I want to keep this quick, right?
Mhm,
And I think a lot of times that's what it is. It goes back to the idea of if it's a vetting process,
mhm.
I'll go out, we'll grab a quick coffee, we're there for half an hour, and then I'll make that decision. And I think that's where the
Do
problem
you
comes in.
think when the women suggest, I'm not saying women haven't suggested coffee dates to me or walks or things like that, but do you think when the man suggested, a woman feels devalued when a man suggests a coffee date?
Again, I've had women say to me that it's not their favorite thing. They're not, and a lot of them have
Mhm,
said, I don't need dinner. And I understand because let's be honest, dinner can get really pricey and expensive,
mhm.
right? And if it's not going anywhere and you're doing 5, 6 dinner dates a week, I understand that as well. But there's so many other things, right?
But haven't you found too that when you go out on dates again in this day and age, you're on dates and let's say you make it 7:30, 8 o'clock, and
Yeah,
you're out with someone. You as a man could even say, do you want to have dinner? Even it's a place that serves dinner but also serves drinks.
yeah,
And you haven't said which is which. More often than not, when I'm out on a first date with someone, a lot of people are too nervous to eat. So it just you end up both having a drink and you could be there for 5 hours.
yeah.
I hate to say it, a lot of my dates last 5 hours. Um, so that's not a brag. It's just they do last 5 hours. No, I can talk, as you've
I've
seen,
never noticed.
as you've
I've
seen,
never noticed.
and about most subjects. So I like to have fun on the dates, and I like to meet interesting people. But what I'm saying is, it's different now in this era because people don't assume you're taking them to dinner, even if you take them to a dinner restaurant. You might share an appetizer or something.
Yeah,
So actually, it doesn't end up being as expensive as it used to. I find more often than not, people just go out and they might have one drink or a coffee and they can sit there for a long time if they're liking each other. It doesn't have to turn into a lot of other things either. So once again, going back to the coffee date, it doesn't matter where you go. It matters the person that you're with and if you are going to have a great interaction together and learn enough about each other to figure out if you want to go on another date. And the second date can be the big date.
the second date I would hope would be a bigger date, first of all,
Well, if
right?
someone likes you, someone likes you. I don't think you have to
I
impress them,
no,
right? But
it's not about that. But I mean, if you're just going for a coffee date the first time,
yeah.
I'm hoping you're not doing a coffee date the second time, and then the third
No,
time,
that's all you
and then
do
the
is
third
coffee
time.
dates is then you have a problem,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
You're not imaginative enough anyways, but
No,
and you keep going the same place for the coffee date, that's not setting a good precedent.
no. But that's where I think some creativity can also be a good thing, right? So we're talking drinks, we're talking is dinner necessary, we're talking coffee,
You put her on
but
a scavenger hunt so she can find the coffee shop.
right?
As
But there's all
long
kinds
as
of
you show up,
things.
that's
Yeah,
okay.
as long
Yeah.
that's you leave clues and you're at the end of you're at the end of the exhibit or
Yeah.
something, right? Like it's, but there's other things you can do to have fun as well, right?
Yeah.
This time of the year it's beautiful. So what's going on around the city that you can do in
Yeah.
terms of a street fest, right? Or just walk in the downtown core. Like
Yeah,
there's so
I
many
don't
options. That's
think
all.
it matters as long as you make it something interesting. But you also got to be able to read, especially if you're online, you got to be able to read their profile and read into what they're saying.
Yeah,
Some people really do say, I don't want to go on that kind of date. I want you to take me for a walk or take me for coffee. Other people, based on their profile, you can read
it's dinner
if
and
they
it's
want to do
dinner and
dinner and
dancing.
dancing, right?
Yeah,
So, but you have to be able to read into that as well. And if you're not that kind of person, then why are you talking to them? So
absolutely.
that's a fail before you even get out there.
Yeah,
But going back to what you said, yes, masculine, feminine, energy. Men should still in this day and age, for at least the first few dates, whether it's two, three, even four, um, be leading and saying, let's go here and let's go there. But let's go even further. Now we're talking about who pays for the date.
Okay, you must have been reading my mind because I was just gonna ask that.
Okay. I'm gonna let you answer it. So
Look, I always pay for the first date, whether it's going somewhere or not.
agreed.
I've always done that. I guess it's
Hmm.
just the way I was raised.
Yep, me too.
Sometimes I will make a joke. I've
Hmm.
made jokes before. I'm like, hey,
Well,
if we're not going out again, just let me know.
look,
But
sometimes women are forward and they will ask you out on a date. But even if a
yeah,
woman asks me out on the first date, I'm still
I'm
paying.
still paying.
Yeah.
And I've had women like, hey, can I contribute or can we split it? Which I think is incredibly generous.
Hmm.
But I still feel like, look, I've initiated,
It's
I've
not
asked.
generous. A lot of them don't want to pay. Sorry.
But I think no, I think it's a nice
Yeah.
offer, right? But I just feel like it's the first date. I've asked them to go out. I feel like I don't even feel like it's an obligation. It's just that's the way I was
Yeah.
raised. It's feel like I should be paying.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're going to go backwards in a minute, but right now, let's just stay on this topic for a second. So, first date, yes.
Yeah.
I'd even say second date, you're still planning it.
Yeah.
Yes. Third date, you're still planning it. By the time you get to the fourth date, though, what's your view on this? And I've talked to certain women about this, and they are very steadfast in their belief here. It's like, I shouldn't be paying. This is the way dating is. It's like the man always pays. Like, okay. So let's go back 100 years. Okay? You can say that, the world is still like the 1950s, but okay, let's go back to the era before that. Let's go to the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
The family farm and all that, right? And, let's forget about, engagement rings or things like that, which didn't come around to the late 1800s, which people think have existed forever. They haven't. Marriage rituals, people used to exchange a cow for their wife. So people are so hung up on like the 1950s though. And how do you get them away from that? Because, then you had the 1960s,
Yeah.
which changed things. The 1970s changed things. You look at we're in an era now too where more women are going to university than men are, right? And probably have a greater capacity to earn more
Mm.
going forward. I'm not saying right
Yeah.
now. It's
Yeah.
like you're still catching up for equal rights, equal pay, all those kind of things. But do you think it's fair that after the fourth date, as an example, that a woman wouldn't even say, that she'd even pay for breakfast the next morning?
Yeah.
And
Look,
again, this is an opinion, this is a question,
no,
right?
absolutely. From based on my perspective, I
Hmm.
think it's a nice gesture where after 4 or 5 dates, they'll be like, hey, let me pick this up or
Yeah,
let me cover this. Look, I don't expect to be 50-50,
yeah,
and that's not a chauvinistic attitude or
no,
anything like that. It's more that if I'm with someone, I want to know I'm with them because they appreciate from me,
yeah,
not for what I can, not purely from monetary purpose,
yeah.
right? I think when you look at partners, yeah, you look at a whole bunch of various things. What can a person provide, right?
Hmm.
And I'm talking about support and understanding and things like
Well,
that.
no one wants to think that someone's just with them for their money or anything like
And we know
that.
what happens.
And we know it totally
We
happens,
right?
but I think very wealthy men, or women know that sometimes people are attracted to them not for who they are, but the transaction, right? They're going to give something to them
Yeah.
and,
In,
but
in,
they're in
in,
it
in,
for
in return, they're expecting
no, think
something
of
in
older
return.
men who are 60 years old dating a 20-year-old
Yeah.
woman. The man should be smart enough that that's transactional. I think the 20-year-old woman knows it's transactional, but
Absolutely.
sometimes the man isn't smart enough to know it's transactional. He
Yeah.
thinks, oh, I'm all these things. I'm like, no,
No, not
right?
even
It's very
close.
odd for a 20. Look, it happens, but people can fall in love all the time for different reasons. But when you look at that on paper, it's probably
No,
not going to happen.
I'll still play the lottery and know my odds will be better.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, so going back to your question, like I say, after date 4, date 5, whatever it is, where it looks like okay, there's some definite potential here and it's moving in that direction.
Hmm.
No, I think I appreciate when someone's like, hey, you know what? You picked up the last few times. Let me grab this. Or it's one of those days, you start off, you do A, B, and C, and it's like, look, you've already taken care of A and B. Let me cover C.
Yeah.
Like to me, it just says, hey, I'm really enjoying time with you. This is about us. It's
Or
not.
even
It's not
something
about
as simple, right? You go on a date and afterwards you still want to keep talking to the person. You go for a walk in an area and that person buys you ice
ice
cream.
cream.
Simple, right?
Yeah,
And it's like
absolutely.
the ice cream might cost them $10, but it's a gesture
It's
of
the
it.
thought
Yeah.
behind
No
it
one's
is
thinking about
so
money at
important.
that point. They're just saying it's a nice gesture the person did it
Absolutely.
for. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because again, it shouldn't be transactional. You should be having fun.
It should be
Or just,
organic,
yeah.
but again, it shows a genuine interest.
Yeah.
It shows a connection.
Yeah. Or care too, right? It's like,
Huge.
um, Here's an interesting one because I've only encountered this ever once when I was dating someone who constantly said thank you, and not in like a way where it's like they were a nervous kind of person. It's just like that's how they were raised. Thank you for everything. A lot of people don't do that. Take them out to
Yeah.
dinner. It's like you never hear the words thank you or anything like that.
I've been really fortunate.
Yeah.
I've got to say, whether it's worked out or not, whether it's led to a second date or not. Um, so one-off dates, you know, short-term dating, long-term
Yeah.
relationships. I'd say I'm not going to say necessarily 100%, but close to 100% have been. I've had the thank yous, and I appreciate that. And that was, it was a sweet gesture and everything else. So I've been really fortunate that way. So as I say, that's something I appreciate. You've experienced
So I've
a lot?
experienced someone saying thank you a lot, and I've had the opposite experience too, where
Okay.
it's get ghosted. But
Yeah, yeah.
that's a thank you, but no thank you right
Okay.
there.
So talking about that,
Being ghosted?
yeah. So let's talk about the post date.
Well, I mean, in the let's not. No, I don't want to jump
You
that
don't,
far
you
ahead.
want to
We're
jump
going to
that
jump
far
back to
yet?
that in a second. We're going
Okay,
to jump to
okay,
the post date in a second, but let's
okay,
finish this list because I've been
okay.
looking
Oh,
at this list
there's
for
still
20
more on
minutes.
the
Oh,
list.
there's
How
tons.
many things are on this
Okay.
list? Okay,
Um, Talking about your past relationship, trashing your ex, being clingy or needy, being distant, cold, or boring, not being authentic. Women want to see the real guy, so we've talked about that one already.
okay.
Um, I had this one where it was hockey playoffs, and I really couldn't help it, and it wasn't even my favorite team. But they were on behind her, and you couldn't help but, if you like hockey, to be looking past her at the screen.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice I was doing it, but I did get called out for it, so I'm throwing that one in there.
Okay.
Looking at your phone, texting other people back.
Yeah.
Your phone should be
Your
away when
phone
you're
should be
on a
away.
date.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
Here's where the exception
Hold on,
is.
one last one.
Okay, okay.
Choosing a restaurant that is too loud where the two of you can't hear each other. So actually, your date ends up being the two of you looking each other's faces and actually liking each other based on attraction, but
But
not
no,
on
no
any
conversation.
substance. Yeah.
Okay. The one thing with phones, and I'm going to say especially for single parents,
Hmm.
I can see there being a need in case the children.
Then they mention it, and
And
that's okay.
exactly.
Yes.
That aside, turn the bloody phone off. The
Yeah.
connection's with the person.
Hmm.
Okay. If you're so worried about texting everything else, you shouldn't be out in the first place.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was one you had mentioned earlier, and I can't remember which one it was now that I'd wanted to talk
Being
about.
late, bad date,
Nope.
being cheap, being lavish, being rude. We talked about that.
Yeah. No, closer to the end.
Close to the end.
Yeah. One of the last four or
Talking
five.
about yourself,
Keep
talking
going.
about past relationships.
Oh, so we know inevitably,
Yeah.
right? Especially if it goes somewhere, people are going to talk about past relationships,
Okay.
right? It's common. I don't think that's uncommon. But again, starting off, and that's all you do on the first date, or even,
What's the red flag of that, though?
well, hey,
How do you know it's a red flag when they're doing
if
that?
that's all you're doing, you're not over the ex.
I can go worse than that. Sometimes people, it's like projection where they're saying this, their ex did all these horrible things. And you actually look at them, and if you know enough, look at them and go, oh, that's not actually your ex. That's you.
Well, I was going to
And,
say,
and I'm running
right.
right now.
Well, no,
Yeah.
that's where the trashing part comes in as
Yeah.
well. Because when someone meets someone new and they're already ready to start trashing an ex,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Takes
absolutely,
two people to have a relationship.
for
Takes two,
sure.
unless someone did something so horrible. But for the most part, when most relationships break up, two people contribute to that. If you can't own up to it and the other person's horrible, every ex you've ever had is horrible.
Yeah,
As a man or a woman, when you hear that from someone,
yeah.
run.
But I go back to it. That's where it's again, the conversation comes up. It didn't work out. This happened, whatever, and then you leave it alone. But don't get into name calling and blaming and all that. No,
You shouldn't even be talking about it at all,
no,
right?
no,
If someone asks you the question, answer it. But if all you're doing is bringing it up, you shouldn't even be on the date because
no.
one, you're not over them. Two, there might be other things going on there.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're into the post-date faux pas.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
How soon after the first date should you follow up with the person? Whether you want to go out with them or not. Or should you follow up with them if you don't want to go out again?
Okay. Again, this depends. There have been dates where I've literally left and I'm walking to my car and I've messaged someone.
Yeah.
I would usually message by the time I got home to make sure they got home okay.
Nice.
At the very least, no matter who it was.
Yeah.
That's a
Yep.
chivalrous thing to do.
I agree.
If I like them at that point, I would also say, this is great. We should do this again sometime soon. Do I necessarily make that date then and there? No.
What about the 3 date rule? I don't even know where the hell that came
I
from,
don't know
but
where it came from either. And, sometimes it makes sense depending on the person again. You might meet someone where they're the kind of person, maybe they don't like to text every day, which you shouldn't be texting someone every day anyways, because that's a false relationship. You should be making dates to get to know them over time, not
yeah.
texting them. It really is bad to start a relationship that way from everything that I've read. Um, but I don't know. It's like setting up, a date, how many days apart you.
I look, I don't like it. To me, it says that if you're interested in someone and then you're waiting, why are you waiting 3 days to show that what?
But you have to set up the next date right away, or just show interest that you want to set up a next date.
When I say the 3 day rule, I'm talking about any form of community. I'm not talking about setting up a date. Even I'm just talking about following up. Like you hear things, it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I had a great time. I'll reach out in a few days because I don't want her to think I'm too interested or I don't want her to think I'm desperate. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, but by 3 days at this point in this day and age, they might feel like you're ghosting them.
Exactly.
Okay?
And if they were interested, you've lost them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because probably before that, you were talking to them like every other day,
Yeah.
just trying to get to know them to make the date. And then all of a sudden, you've just dropped off.
And if you had a great time, I agree.
And is that a game?
Oh hell, the 3 day
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't play games.
Yeah. It's like 1980s thinking.
Okay, so
Yeah.
go back. So go back to this. So you don't have a good time. Is it okay then to ghost? You're not planning on going out again.
Is it okay to ghost? Is it a natural thing to just let it tail off? Or what's ghosting and what's just letting it naturally tail off? I know I'm repeating myself there, but
I mean, look,
because
if
that's a conversation I've had with
okay,
people. Ghosting is more intentionally just don't want to talk to them. They're messaging you and you're not messaging back. Let's say you had a conversation and then neither one of you is messaging each other. Is that ghosting?
no, if you had a conversation at the end of the night, it was nice meeting you. I'm not feeling it or whatever. That's one thing. But if it's like, hey, I really enjoyed this, so on and so forth,
Yeah.
and you're just spewing bullshit, and then you ghost,
Yeah.
I have an issue with that.
Okay.
Right? It's like, you know what? You got a pair, or at least hopefully you got a pair.
Use them.
Use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stand up, you know what? And just say, hey, I had a nice time, but I'm not feeling the chemistry. I'm not feeling this.
Especially if you're put on the spot to do it and then don't lie and say, yeah, I'm still interested, blah, blah,
Absolutely.
blah. You have to
Absolutely.
be honest in that moment because then you're not being authentic. And I think
Yeah.
most people would appreciate it. I think in the world we're living in now, a lot of people they haven't built up a tough exterior, I would say, but they've gotten used to the fact that you can talk to so many people that can't all be for you. So if someone's not talking to you, we kind of have to just get used to it and say, not
Absolutely.
everyone's for me. But if someone puts you on the spot and says, are you interested or you're not, tell them the truth.
Yeah. And rejection builds character. And I think the stats, I've got them here very quickly.
Yeah.
I know we're wrapping up the episode, but what is it? Here we go. 20 to 40% of first dates lead to a second. So if that's the case, let's go with the low number, 20%.
Yeah.
So out of every 5 dates, you'll get a second date, 1 out of every 5, maybe 2 out of every 5.
Okay. That sounds about right.
If
I
you're
don't think
Adam,
there's
if you're
anyone.
Adam, it's probably like 4 out of every 5. But that's Adam.
It's not true.
But definitely
3 out of 5.
but definitely an interesting topic,
Yeah.
and I think one that needed to be discussed.
Yeah, it definitely needed to be discussed. And I think it's helpful for the women to see it from an older man's perspective, especially guys that have been around a long time. I've been in the dating pool on and off for years. But I've also, been in long-term relationships as of you.
Yeah.
And then in between, you've gone and had dates in between. So we're not just coming out after 20 years and doing it. We've also seen the evolution of how
Absolutely.
dating's worked over the years. Each time we've come out of a relationship and tried to build that again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think if we finish off here, what do we think the biggest fail people have when dating in this day and age, era, whatever you want to call it?
I think having preconceptions. I think having almost a playbook ahead of time and not being authentic. Just be organic.
Yeah.
That's it for me. What about you?
No expectations?
No,
Yeah.
no, because when you have expectations, you put pressure on the other person, you put pressure on yourself, and right away, you can feel that energy. When you just go with no expectations, it's amazing how well it can often work
Yeah,
out.
I personally agree with that because most people will ask me, "Are you nervous for your day?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah,
And they're like,
I'm
"Why
like,
are you not nervous for your day?" I'm like, "Why should I be nervous for my day? I just get to meet someone. I get to eat. It's either going to turn out great or, it was nice to meet the person." And yeah.
exactly. exactly.
All right. Well,
So
this is a
yeah,
valuable conversation.
I think so. I was gonna say in closing, I
In
think it's
closing,
important for everyone that you like the episode, you like what you've seen so far. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Kings of Chaos on YouTube.
like and
Follow us
share.
there. Yep. Like and share on Instagram, Kings of Chaos podcast with dots in between everything.
Yeah.
So right, Kings dot
The
of dot
King. Yeah.
chaos dot podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Kings of Chaos, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah. And look for more episodes too.
Adam, great conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Look
Okay.
forward to seeing everyone next time.
Take care.